Element A440, and you are watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you today from just outside the GHS booth at the 2018 NAMM show, Anaheim, California, with our special guest, Element A440 bassist Katt Bell. Hello, Katt.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. It's good to see you, good to be with you. Boy, there's so much I want to ask you after having watched some of your videos and educated myself on your band. And
this is like, there's no rating on this, right? Because I'm not good at PG-13 interviews. So whatever, okay, cool, whatever questions then.
Just be yourself.
It's hard to be anything else.
I want to start from the beginning though. Tell me about your earliest introductions to music and how you became a bass player.
Actually, my earliest introductions to music, I actually grew up without hearing any kind of like metal or industrial or anything hard until I was 16. I lived so far in the middle of nowhere.
Well, you're from Mexico, right?
I was born down there, yeah, but then we lived like way, way, way up in the mountains. My father worked for the Forest Service, so we were always on these itty-bitty ranger stations. So I hadn't heard anything but classical and occasional folk music because I played violin.
I would not have guessed that, given what you do now for a living, but go ahead.
Yeah, but then when I was 16, suddenly we moved further into like more civilized territory, and I heard Iron Maiden, Violent Femmes, the Sex Pistols, and Concrete Blonde all in one day, and it blew my mind.
Now it's starting to make sense.
Yep, and I mean the bass kind of makes sense too, because being primarily a violin player, it's exactly backwards, and I can tear into the bass the way you can never tear into a violin without absolutely destroying it. And it also gave me an interesting lack of knowledge about what I should and shouldn't do with the bass, because I just had it and I had this sound, and I mean it's actually kind of cool that I never had that early experience. You know, I didn't grow up with metal or industrial. So when I was 16 and that happened, it's a lot easier to have your mind blown at 16 than it is at 6.
You were still in Mexico, though, at the time?
No, this is Northern California.
Ah, when you said in the mountains, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, the Sierra Mountains. Way, 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 way up nowhere. And in that middle of nowhere, there was one single badass music teacher that when we got signed, I went back some 20-something years later and said thank you to Mr. Bruce Weinberger, who is still teaching music up in that mountains. So he's awesome. There's somebody up there that's kicking the shit out of everybody's boxes and saying, you go do whatever you think you can do in music.
Well, who were some of your bass influences? I'm guessing maybe Steve Harris and some of the other guys in that realm?
You know, it sounds too cliche. I don't really have influences because, like I said, I didn't hear anything. My mind was blown. Primarily, you know, being a violin player, it's so ingrained in my head to be a treble, you know, and playing with that kind of classical thing that I'm more influenced in what I'm trying to play with.
Okay.
Than anybody else. I mean, I think there's some really admirable bass players out there, and there's some people I go see that, you know, I don't always necessarily like their music, but I respect anybody that's done anything new. But I can't really cite a single influence like, oh, I want to be like that guy or that girl when I play on stage. Yeah.
Tell me about Element A440, because you seem like such a nice, likable person. And when we see your videos, you look like, well, a bunch of angry young people.
Angry young people? Well, shit, I mean, it's not like there aren't reasons to be angry. People should be angry. And I think it's not necessarily so much that we're angry up there, it's that we're raw. We are just like, literally, for Halo and I, Halo's our singer, we go up on stage and there's an element, literally, no pun intended, of peeling that civilized skin off, and just everything that's in our heads, in our guts, in our thoughts, it's just going to come out right there. And it's like when you've got people down there and they're responding to that, and it lets them peel their skin off, it lets them do the same thing. So it's not angry, it's just raw. It's just like pure mad creation right in that moment. So that intensity, people tend to confuse that intensity for anger, and sometimes, yeah, we are pissed off about some of the things that we're talking about and some of the situations that we're in, but it's not always angry.
It sounds like your shows must be very cathartic for you also. Afterwards, you must feel like, oh, I'm glad I got that out.
Yeah, afterwards, it's like we just kind of want to crawl out in the parking lot like, give me 5 minutes, I need to put my skin back in and come back into myself. You know, suddenly I'm done and I realize, oh, I'm 5'1", I still have all my gear I have to take off stage and all this is happening. But it is cathartic. It's cathartic for us. It's cathartic for our audiences, and it should be, because if it's not cathartic for them, we didn't do it right.
So tell me, what's keeping you busy these days?
The band. The band. We are working on a new record right now. We signed recently with Monster Man Records with Doyle and EMP out of Phoenix. So we have taken a hiatus from the road, which kind of hurts, but we kind of needed, because we've been touring nationally nonstop since 2013, and we've been DIY the entire time. So we just moved, we rebuilt the studio, and we're recording an album right now. Also, I design and build a lot of the merch, like all the leather stuff that you see on stage, our masks, our merchandise. I do that, so between writing songs, we're designing new stuff to have ready to go for the road.
Tell me about your gear.
Oh, do we have that much time?
Well, tell me what kind of bass you play. I think I know what kind of strings you play, amps, effects. You know, start with the basics and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, actually, it's pretty basic. There are no effects, first of all. I've got 2 Hellraisers. I've got a 5 and a 4. Those are Schecter Hellraisers. I just got the brand new 4.
Schecter, you said?
Yeah, Schecter. I have one of their original Omens that stopped making a couple years ago. I plan on getting a 5. And then I've got one bass that we call Murderface, and that's a Memorial. It started out life as an Ibanez. I disassembled it, rebuilt it, refinished the neck, refinished the body. And that's it's a memorial bass because we've lost some people since we've been in this band, and everybody that we lose has their name carved in that bass. And so they always go on the road with us. Yeah, obviously I do use GHS strings.
Why do you like GHS strings?
GHS. There was an arms race for a while between GHS strings and the people that make my picks, because I go custom Sinister picks, and I kept needing, because I'm a little girl, but I play a big bass, and I needed longer and longer strings. They need to be heavy to handle the tension, like with the drop tuning and stuff that we use. So GHS kept working with me doing custom strings and custom strings. I think the thing that I loved about them is they kept giving me bigger and bigger ones, until I swear one that John brought out was a joke, was like triple wound. I'm like, what is that? He's like, it's like a 150. I'm like, seriously? So
150?
Yeah, I was like, well, if the hitch breaks, we'll just tie the trailer to the van with this thing. But I usually use a 131, but I kept breaking them, trying to get, with the picks are heavier, and then I get the heavier gauge strings. But as big as they made them, they never lost their versatility of tone. It's like, I can evoke a different tone from the string every time, just by changing the way that I'm picking, just by my fingering style, whether or not I'm using a pick. So they never lost that, and even though they kept making me bigger and heavier gauge strings, until they finally worked with me to get a custom set, and I have a custom set for all of my 5 strings and all of my 4 strings. So.
What about amps?
Amps, I've got the Peavey right now that I use, and Ampeg head, the Ampeg and Peavey. Other than that, I don't use any effects. I have a Sennheiser wireless mic and a cork tuner. That's it.
There you go. What about the future? You mentioned the new album, but what about after that, or as far as you can see? Is there something else that you'd like to do that you haven't accomplished yet? You're still very young. You have obviously a lot of energy.
Probably never run out of energy. After we get the next one, we just want to go back out on the road again, and I want to go to Europe. We've toured the country a lot. I'll never stop wanting to tour the country. By the way, every time you read the news and it makes you scared to get out of your house because there's like mass murderers and scary rapists and drug dealers and crazy people, the more I leave my house and I get out, the more awesome I find out people are. People in the middle of nowhere for no reason have helped us when we've needed it too. So the world's a good place. You just need to get out there. And so I want to see what Europe looks like. I want to tour Europe. That's our next plan. That's our next goal.
I'm sure it will happen as your popularity increases. Last question, Katt. What would you be if you weren't a bass player or a violin player or anything in music? Something outside of music?
Probably a writer.
What kind of writing would you do?
Whatever came into my head. I mean, really, I'd have to be creating something.
I mean, like fiction, nonfiction? Or?
Probably nonfiction mostly, unless I got something that I was really into that, I was interested. I could probably write you a dissertation on medieval illumination and calligraphy. I studied that for a long time. I got 10 years of applied science in that. So, but it would have to be created, so it would probably mostly be fiction.
All right.
Poetry.
You're a deep thinking person. Poetry, I wouldn't have guessed from your, stage persona.
I like to keep them guessing.
Yeah. You keep doing that. Well, Katt, it's great getting to know you. Congratulations on your success. Please keep us posted on the new album, the tour, and Europe, not if it happens, but when it happens, and anything else that you think they'd like to know, and we will share it with all these nice people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having the interview. On
location outside the GHS booth at the 2018 NAMM show, Anaheim, California, with Katt Bell of Element A440. I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.